When I say that I am Belfast, I don't mean that I lived there or feel that I'm the place. I am the place. Let's fall to earth. Here, I'll take your hand. Come with me. Let's get lost.
Welcome to Kermode Uncut. I'm thrilled to say I'm here with Mark Cousins, whose new film I Am Belfast is just coming out on DVD. Mark, for those who haven't seen it, explain the premise of I Am Belfast.
It's trying to be a sort of dreamlike account of the city, but it's got something very unusual about it. It's narrated by a 10,000-year-old woman. And the idea there was the story from the time before it was even a city. Have somebody who's a kind of almost like a mythic storyteller. And so that's what I've done.
You came back to Belfast like so many travellers went there. Belfast's a port, a harbour. We made the world's linen and ships for the seven seas.
Now, obviously, Belfast is your hometown, and one of the things I loved about the film is that it's both very affectionate and kind of magical, but it also has an awareness of the troubled history of the place. But you're not doing that kind of news story thing, which is let's focus on the trouble. So how did you balance that?
I knew I had to deal with the troubles, and the reason for making the film is that they're over. I don't think I could have made this during the war, but I noticed that my friends and I, when we would get together and talk about things, we would get very moved. And you know the way sometimes you get moved after something's finished? I was at a funeral last week and didn't cry at the time, but afterwards did, you know. And it's that kind of when your nervous system unwinds enough to let the emotions out. So I knew that I had to let the emotions out in this film, but maybe not in the expected place. And the war shouldn't be up front. We should do other things. They sort of show the everyday pleasures of a city, you know, the colours, the walking, the sort of people watching element. And then at some point I knew that the feeling should well up, the sadness, the regret, the shame, I would say. Did we do this to each other? And we were filming a wide shot and then a close-up on Helena's face, and it was a blustery cold October day, and the cinematographer was the great Chris Doyle. And when I said cut, I went up and I noticed she'd been crying, and I said, can we just run for 3 minutes on that? And so that shot was the moment that I used quite late in the film to let the emotions well up, as it were.
Out there walking, doesn't matter, baby.
How much is happy accident a part of what you do? Because if you think, for example, of Story of Children and film, that's basically you letting a video camera run with two children playing and then looking back at it and going, well, hang on, in this moment I'm reminded of this, and in this moment I can see this. There's a section in I Am Belfast in which we see two people walking towards each other on a street. This then turns into a much more deliberate section, but those two people crossing each other and you wondering, are they going to meet? Are they going to shake hands? Are they going to kiss? Is that I assume that's a happy accident? Pure
accident. And I've got to know a lot of filmmakers, and the more you talk to them, the more they talk about the happy accident. Like Bertolucci says that Last Tango in Paris was full of happy accident. I've worked a lot in Iran with the great Iranian directors, Kiarostami, and so much of what they do is accident. And I'm not inventive enough to come up with a scene like that. There are a number of moments in I Am Belfast where I just don't think I would have come up with it, but I was surprised. And you have to keep your eyes open for that kind of stuff. I come from a documentary background, as you know, and this isn't a particularly documentary film, I would say, but it's got that kind of fancy phrase, a kind of centrifugal, outwardly directed look to it, you know, which is really valuable. And if you're working, if you want to create a film that's beautiful, that's visually beautiful, cinematically beautiful, you can do that with a brilliant cinematographer and good equipment. But you also want the kind of grit, hopefully the unexpected honesty that kind of pricks you. And if you can get that balance.
The silver car turns down the Catholic hill. The road to the left's Protestant.
Tell me about working with David Holmes. I love David Holmes' work. I think he's fabulous. I think his contribution to I Am Belfast is brilliant, not least because it's not in your face. It's very much part of the texture of the film.
When we got together to work together, it was kind of like a bromance or something. You know, I always think that musicians want to be cinematic, and those of us who make films want to be musical. So there's the two, each medium desires the other in a way, you know. And David's directed a very good film as well.
He has. The short film is superb. Yeah.
So he and I would sit in his room, and there might be a little bottle of wine on the go, surprise, surprise, and he would use a completely non-literal way of making music. We wouldn't watch the scene, and he would go, "Let's make this piece of music because that will refer to that point." Much more random, much more abstract, much more playful in that. He would just pull tracks that he had recorded or samples of things and then layer them. And I remember I would say, "That's great, but could it slow down so it feels more like a walking pace, because this is a walking film." So I learnt an awful lot. I felt I was working with somebody like Salvador Dali or something. I felt as if I was working with one of the greats when I was working with him.
I didn't know it would feel so good, this wooden overcoat. I didn't know you'd hold me high up on your shoulder blades.
The film has a dramatic sequence, which is the funeral of the last bigot. Tell me about that sequence and what it means to you.
In Northern Ireland, you know, if you're very, very political, you don't actually believe in bigotry. You just think the war came about through social justice issues, and it mostly did. However, it has to be said, there was an element of bigotry in some of the combatants. There was an element of hatred for hatred's sake. So I thought, you know, I'd made a film with lots of sad and realistic and truthful bits. Why don't I have a hypothetical sequence, a future sequence? Imagine that the very last bigot has died, and hopefully there's some comedy in it, because we see him in his coffin and he doesn't know that everybody's there to celebrate his death, I think, but they're there because they're pleased that bigotry has gone. It's a hypothetical sequence. We get this in a lot of Hollywood musicals, the what if moment, you know, if only things were better, if only this romance was perfect. And so I thought, why not do that? And it's a big long sequence, 6.5 minutes, no cut, 24 camera positions. So the music was so important, and then David wrote a beautiful modulated piece of music for it, and so I thought it could work.
How could we not be right?
If you had to sort of to tell somebody, you know, in a sentence or so, what it is they should be expecting with it, how would you describe I Am Belfast? Because I've looked at the posters. It's not a documentary.
I was really aiming for, you know, like the first 10 minutes of Blue Velvet, the David Lynch film, which is about the everyday, it's about suburban life, but then it digs down into the undergrowth and you see the snarly thing. And I wanted to try and create something that had that beauty, but that snarliness in it as well. And I felt even that shot of the dog in slow motion and in the first 5 minutes of Blue Velvet is sort of what I was hoping for in some ways.
You're going to have a hard job putting that on the poster. It's like the first 5 minutes of Blue Velvet. Beautiful, but snarly. Mark, thank you very much.
Pleasure, as always. Thank you.
Softly, softly.
I've had quite a dream life.
Turn the key.
There's magic here.
And oh.